It's the 70s, and a few million Americans were serving the military stationed around the globe, and were missing the comforts of home. Books of fiction including Lord of the Rings, Chronicles of Narnia, and even comic books was one way our troops kept entertained far away from home. It was an escape from the often harsh reality of day-to-day life for these brave soldiers. Looking at the time period, we know the 70s was booming in terms of comics coming out, new characters being created, and all in all, the medium of comics just thriving at an all-time high, which would expand even more after 1980 with the surge of comic book shops opening up and a market to meet it with. These soldiers would read the slew of new Marvel and DC characters coming out like Shang-Chi, Moon Knight, a little bit later on, the new Teen Titans, but also enjoy the classic titles coming out like Superman, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, Batman, and more. It was also the surge of cosmic heroes where characters would be out battling in space instead of on our Earth. This was also before the year-long spanning crossovers and in-depth stories across many different titles that required a constant pull list. For the most part, comics were still one-shotters and isolated stories that they could sink their teeth into with just one book. Now just imagine being a soldier miles from home during this period. You're lonely and missing the ones you love. Your days are spent fantasizing about coming home to your loved one and thinking about starting a life beyond the horrors of war. Maybe you even have a Polaroid of your loved one keeping you together that you coincidentally would use as a bookmark in your favorite book of escapism. And maybe, just maybe, advertisers knew this about our brave boys and used this as an opportunity to spread a thick and obvious 4-page spread of a pretty engagement ring for you to choose from when you finally see your girl again. This perfectly blended with your day-to-day dreaming of a better life and would make these soldiers think about popping the question back home. An advertisement that truly knew its audience. But these advertisers didn't start out with such a tame ad at first. In fact, one could say they really knew their audience, as the first round of adverts that would appear in comics were actually that of pin-up nature. Girls in lingerie printed on thick, glossy paper stock, showcasing an ad for women's underwear, something a lonely soldier boy could not ignore. So, in the early 70s, comics such as Thor 187, Submariner 37, Incredible Hulk 139, to name a few, had one of 8 NDS, or National Diamond Sales, inserts displayed as a centerfold if the comic was sold on military bases. But that wasn't the only ones directed at soldiers during this time. A less expensive to produce insert wrap was featured inside the cover of a few comics printed during the era, called the Menin wrap. This advertisement featured a Live Like a Millionaire sweepstake, which was a mail-in sweepstake, the grand prize being an all-expenses-paid vacation to the Italian Riviera, where the lucky soldier and his best girl would be treated to a private villa and an award worth about $1 million at that time. It also included consolation prizes such as motorcycles, golf clubs, all conditional upon ordering albums via mail or if they joined the Pentagon Federal Credit Union. In fact, there were a few variations of inserts before finally arriving at the Mark Jewelers inserts we know today. One such ad was an Alka-Seltzer ad displaying a poor military chap being chewed out by his sergeant reading, "Alka-Seltzer can cure headaches like these," once again proving the might of marketing teams understanding their audience. Finally, we saw the arrival of the Mark Jeweler inserts. Mark Jeweler inserts were made of cardboard versus the slick paper of the NDS inserts, although they were also centerfolds. This type of paper makes Mark Jeweler variants, we'll call them, quite obvious to spot just from looking at the top of the book as shown here. In fact, next time you see comic books from this era, always make sure to look at the book from the top to see if it's hiding a bit of advertisement history. Another thing you should know when looking for these in the wild is that they will only be on newsstand copies, not any direct edition copies. So if you see a UPC Spider-Man face down there in the left-hand corner, there's no chance it'll be a Mark Jewelers. Mark Jeweler advertisements removed the lingerie photos and went a more honorable direction comprised almost entirely of engagement rings throughout the 4 pages of the inserts. This told our boys an important lesson. These ladies at home deserve the best rock. Leveraging the emotions of these lonely servicemen, these ads proved quite profitable for Mark Jewelers as they thought about nothing but getting engaged to their loved ones 24/7. Comment down below if you served during this time and ever saw these ads yourself overseas. Now, the ratio of standard comics to the number of variants is currently unknown, but it appears that the variants were produced in a significantly smaller quantity. People speculate that they make up less than 5% of newsstand copies during this time. However, I couldn't find definitive numbers to confirm that. I can confirm that these ads can be found in comics between the years of 1972 until as recently as 1991, which is the most recent example I was able to find. Maybe it goes even more recent than that. I was surprised to see this because when I was initially researching this, everywhere I saw said that the Mark Jewelers ended in about 88, 87. Well, this is 5 years later than that. Just goes to show you how much is known about this stuff, guys. On the subject of ratios, when one does come across these Mark Jewelers variants, the price tag often reflects that of a much higher rarity, as I believe it should. It's a piece of comic history, also advertisement history, maybe even more specifically American military history as well. So that puts 3 different collectors markets after this. When scrolling through recent sales on Mark Jewelers books, they did appear to be notably pricier than the same book would have without the insert, but it was hard to decipher an actual percentage increase, as some were only slightly more expensive and some were ridiculously more expensive. Let's just call it between 20 and 30% increase in price on average. The real rarity would have to go to those lingerie National Diamond sales inserts though, and those Alka-Seltzer ads more, but no one ever really talks about those enough. It's also important to note that the majority of these seem to be found in lower grade. In fact, I only found one recent Iron Man 91 sale that happened to have the full 9.8 grade. Perhaps that's due to the fact that there's less of these, many of them were sold overseas on base and didn't make it home safe or certainly hold up over the years. The few I've found in my hunts in the wild over the years usually at best are in fine minus condition and usually hover around the poor condition range. I do have a friend that owns a 7.0 copy of the first appearance of Beta Ray Bill, which is usually the highest grade these will be found in. Mentioning this book specifically, there is one 9.8 actually. At the time of this video's recording, it's actually listed on eBay for a cool $5,000, which is $4,000 over the fair market value of a regular newsstand 9.8 of that Thor key. More than money, though, it's the priceless feeling that these books gave to many of our service members that maybe gave them a nudge to go out and get engaged. This is Mint Hunter Comics, and thanks for watching this quick video on the world's first comic book variant.